Thanks so much for making our tails wag by watching this guest interview from Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life. Make sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of our Four-Legged Life content. Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life.
Welcome back to the Four-Legged Life Show. I'm your host, Arden Moore. Now raise your hand, your paw, if you love treating your dog to a walk in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
I know I do.
I do.
But what do you do if a loose dog comes heading your way? You're about to find out from our special guest. She is the co-founder of the Dog Gurus. She's one of the nation's top certified professional dog trainers, and she's a pretty cool chick too. So please give pause and applause to Robin Bennett. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it. We haven't talked in a while, so this is fun.
I know. It's been too long. Hey, Robin, I'm betting many of our pet pals tuning in right now have experienced just that, where you're taking your dog for a walk and, here comes a loose dog heading your way. It's such a big issue that I think you've actually given a webinar on it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I have. It's one of the most common questions I get is, what do I do when a loose dog is coming up? And even for me, my dog that I have right now is actually friendly, but I've had reactive dogs. Doesn't seem to matter. It's fearful. It scares me when a dog is approaching us because you never know what that dog is going to be like. And then even more if you know your dog is not good with other dogs. So there are some things that you can do to help kind of mitigate things. Number one is I would learn about canine body language. That will probably help you to know, should you actually be nervous or is the dog actually friendly? That might help to start with.
And I'm humbly trying to learn Spanish through, Duolingo, and I sound Italian, but I'm reading it. But you definitely have a PhD, pretty happy dog, in you speak dog. And I think communication is the biggest thing. Everybody's coming out of COVID. They've got dogs. They want to do things. They want to get out and about. I know tell us the different things that you do that they can steer them to the roughly speaking dog, what it's about and why it's part of the Dog Gurus.
Absolutely. So the Dog Gurus really was founded on teaching canine body language primarily to pet care businesses. So we work with daycare and boarding facilities around the world to help them know how to keep dogs safe when they're doing off-leash play with those dogs. And it's great thing is it's stuff everybody can learn. And pet parents, we really want you to have a better way to communicate with your dog. So we started taking that knowledge from the Dog Gurus and put it together in a membership site at Roughly Speaking Dog, where you can learn about canine body language and just how to build a better bond with your dog, mostly through understanding how to read their body language, because it's really not that hard. And that will just help.
And I want to make sure people have the right spelling. It's Ruffly Speaking Dog.
Yep.
All right. I'm laughing. I have a degree in communications from Purdue, but I think I'm going to get schooled by Robin Bennett of Roughly Speaking Dog and the Dog Gurus. I think your program is long overdue because our dogs don't bluff. They're not going to win a poker game, are they?
They aren't. And there's so many ways you can be a better advocate for your dog. All the little miscommunications that sometimes happen between people and pets can be avoided if we just understand what they're saying. And they are very obvious once you learn just a few simple things that you can help to better understand your dog when you're out and about with them. And that translates to seeing another dog approaching yours. So hopefully that dog does not intend to do harm, but if you can read them, you can probably get a better sense of that and then take some action to hopefully prevent injury to yourself or to your dog if you're out for a walk with your dog.
So we're not going to spill all the beans because we want people to join your group, but this is really important because a dog fight, a dog bite, it not only has a physical scar, it can have an emotional scar on both the person and the dog. And they're reading our body language. So people are interested. Here we go, walking our dog on a leash. Give us a few do's and don'ts. should we see a dog coming, or should we back up and just say, what do we do on the walk to kind of, what should we bring? How do we get in the right mindset? Let's start with the start position.
Yeah, so I would say things to bring. Number one are treats. I love to bring treats when I walk my dog. I don't necessarily reward him all the time, but I do have treats available. But I also like treats because if I see a dog approaching me, one of the first things I will do if I see an off-leash dog is yell, sit or go home. Because most of these dogs that are loose are family pets. And most of the time, if you yell at them, they're going to be like, oh, I guess I shouldn't go up to her. Maybe I should steer the other direction. So I do try to recommend that. Just yell, sit or go home. But my next option is that I will take a whole handful of treats out of my treat bag and I will throw them at that dog in the hope that that dog will say, whoa, there's like all this chicken on the ground now, and just gives me a little time to get away. And I don't want to run, but I want to quickly divert my direction to a different way so that I don't necessarily have to approach that oncoming dog. So, and hopefully
now your voice tone, because I go an octave lower. I go, hey, sit.
Exactly. It does matter.
So
the tone
what's
does
happening
matter.
if you're a soprano and you're going, the dog's like, oh, that's a wuss, right?
Right, exactly. You definitely want to sound angry. I mean, you want that dog to say, okay, not worth going up to her. She doesn't seem friendly. And we wouldn't normally
Robin is, everybody. Robin really is.
Yeah, I am normally very friendly. But in this situation, I want to just do what's going to be best for my dog, especially if my dog doesn't like other dogs coming up. So I just want to try to mitigate that happening at all and just get that dog to steer away from me and go a different direction. And then the treats can help as well. If I also recommend, if you're in a place where you encounter dogs all the time, sometimes having a small portable umbrella that pops open can be helpful, where you can just open it. Now, if you're going to do this, I would work with your dog first to make sure your dog is used to having that umbrella open away from him, but you're actually going to open it into the face of that oncoming dog, which for most dogs is going to startle them and they're going to be a little bit shaken and hopefully leave you alone.
Well, okay, Mary Poppins, it's going to also create a visual barrier, which also may help tone down if it's a big bad dog coming or something. I mean, I see a Mary Poppins come out and have an umbrella pop open to me. That's a startle. What's happening in the mind of that dog coming your way?
Well, that is going to startle them. That's exactly what's going to happen. And you can hopefully push that dog and sort of, not without touching him, push him a little bit backwards, because he's going to be like, whoa, what in the world was that? Because he doesn't know what that is. But like I said, you also want to make sure before you use that tool that your dog is used to it, because otherwise you're going to scare your dog.
Yeah, they're going to piddle down the leg. Yeah,
exactly. I've even seen people that use umbrellas that have like an image on it. They open it up and it looks like a frog head or a penguin or whatever, which probably would even be more startling to that dog that's seeing.
I have led an isolated life. Oh my gosh. Give us a tip. We got about a minute before the break. What's a good tip you can share to help people with their own dog to be conditioned that this is nothing scary for you? This is our little umbrella barrier.
I would start with just having that umbrella open and carrying it around with your dog, walking with your dog, giving your dog treats, making it a fun game, and then gradually work up to having it open near your dog, but maybe not right next to him. So maybe your dog's like a foot behind you and you open it up and toss treats. And then you just work up to where that just becomes a big game of your dog. Every time that umbrella opens, they get lots of treats or lots of play or lots of petting, until the dog just starts to think, this is just a normal thing that happens from time to time.
You can kind of attach it to your jeans or something. How would you almost look like a gunslinger, right?
That's what I would do. I would get one of the smaller ones, and one that has a button so that you just can push the button and it opens up.
Oh my gosh. Hey, I'm already getting schooled in a great way with one of the co-founders of the Dog Gurus. We're talking Robin Bennett. And I want you all to check out, it's thedoggurus.com, correct?
That's correct.
All right. When we come back, it's going to give us some more survival skills on how to deal with neighborhood walks and more. So sit, stay. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back, Pet Pals, to the Four-Legged Life Show. I'm your host, Arden Moore. We're speaking with Robin Bennett. She is one of the co-founders of the Dog Gurus with Susan Biggs. And before we continue, can you tell us a little bit? You guys have been co-founders of the Dog Gurus for a little bit of time. Shout out to Susan for us.
Well, yes, we have been together for years working in the pet industry. Met each other actually a long time ago and actually wrote a book together and worked as a joint venture. She had a company and I had a company, and we just occasionally did stuff together in the pet industry, primarily with daycare boarding facilities, focusing on helping them to take good care of the dogs. And eventually, about 7 years ago, we said we should just put all of our stuff together and focus on one thing. And so we started the Dog Gurus formally as an actual company about 7 years ago, and help with business consulting and staff training of daycare and boarding facilities around the world.
And you live in Virginia. Where does Susan live?
Actually, I moved about 4 years ago to Colorado, and Susan's in Texas. So we've never actually lived in the same state, and we worked together virtually since long before Zoom was a thing. So it's kind of funny now. It's so much easier now. When we wrote our book together, we were emailing chapters back and forth to each other because they didn't have all the online collaboration stuff they have now.
Wow. Well, I do know, and we'll have you back on another time, because doggy daycares, the whole popularity is imploding. And there's a lot of people that got dogs after COVID or during COVID, and now we're out and about. So we talked about the umbrella technique. What are some things you should never do? I have a 35-pound dog, Kona, and I have an 8-pound dog, Emma. I try to make sure that Emma is not a purse my ride dog. She's a dog, pour on the floor. Is it good or bad if a dog's approaching to pick up that little dog?
Well, so there's a risk involved if you pick up that little dog, because the dog that's coming at you could potentially jump up. Now, that being said, if you're near something where you can pick up your dog and put them on something, like put them on a car or put them on a trash can, that might actually be a little bit better than just picking them up and holding them. But I will say there is a risk there. Now, the downside, though, is if your dog gets attacked and is on the ground, there's a risk there, too, that your dog, especially if it's a large dog, can injure a small dog so easily. So I do know that people end up saying, I'm just going to take the risk and pick them up. But I would say try to pick them up.
You don't have your hands free.
Right. Then that's the other problem, is now you really can't do anything because you're basically like wielding your body with your dog in it. So I always say, if you want to pick your dog up, try to pick them up and put them like on a car or in the back of a truck
or on over a fence maybe, or something. Right, make sure there's not a big dog on the other side of the fence.
Exactly. I did have a client once that put her dog in the trash can and closed the lid. So I kind of thought that was and it worked. The dog just left them after her dog was in the trash can. But she did get it out afterwards, obviously. But if you have someplace like that where you can pick them up and put them on something, that could help.
I like the cars, because you always heard in the old days, just get a garden hose. Where the heck is a garden hose on a sidewalk? And You're not going to have a little squirt gun. That's not going to do anything.
A lot of people do use the water method, or they always recommend it. But I have found that unless you have something like a water hose, just a bottle of water generally isn't enough of a deterrent to get the dog to stop. So I don't really recommend that unless, you happen to be walking by and someone's watering their yard. I suppose you could grab the hose and do it, but that's just not as likely to happen.
What about sounds? And I know there's companies that make that burst of air. Are those things effective? Because you do look like a gunslinger if you've got your little mini umbrella and your little air spray. What's your take on those things?
I do think those can be very effective. Again, though, that any dog that's hearing that sound, it's going to punish all the dogs, which means your dog is probably going to hear that as well. So it's another tool that if you're going to use it, you might want to make sure that it's not going to affect your dog. But we do recommend those. And they're small marine air horns, like for boating.
Yeah.
And you can buy them at a boating stores. So it is, if you have an environment where there's just constantly dogs around, like loose dogs all the time, it's not a bad tool. But the thing I would be worried about, especially if you have a dog that has kind of sound sensitivities, like a lot of the herding breeds don't really like those loud noises. It's really, really loud. So your dog is going to be affected as well. That's the downside to it.
Yeah. And the dog is, if you can get your dog behind you, how do you calm down? Now, Emma, I love her. First little tiny dog I've ever had, but she squeaks like, Harry, come here and bite me. Which would be like, I can't find the mute button on her. How do I calm my dog to lower the reactivity being read by the dog coming our way?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things that I do recommend is, as much as possible, get your dog out and start to get them used to being in the presence of other dogs. They don't necessarily have to play with every dog, but just getting them used to being around so it's not such a big, whoa, this is never happens. I never see dogs kind of thing. One of the tools I do like to use with my own dogs is to toss treats on the ground. And if they're really, really high value treats, I want my dog to go, oh, wow, there's like all these treats on the ground. Lowering their head can sometimes send a signal to that other dog that they're not a threat, and keeps them preoccupied as well because they're eating stuff. But I would work on a lot of that outside of the context of, oh, right this second, there's a loose dog coming.
And I like that you say more than just one treat, because sometimes people get the misunderstanding. You're walking with your dog, sit and give them a treat. Okay, keep walking, sit and get a treat. But you're kind of sprinkling that because what does that do to the dog's mind, seeing a jackpot on the sidewalk?
Exactly. They basically are now in a different mindset. They're saying, whoa, there's like all this stuff going on. And it helps to distract them from, focusing on something else, and can get them to settle down. Just the fact that they're now eating treats and are able to eat treats, it's going to help to calm them down. Sort of like comfort food for us, I suppose.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I do know sometimes a person means well, and a dog pops out of their front door because it was left ajar, or they do have the dog on the leash and the dog gets free and the dog is coming. Now you've got the person behind them going, any advice for how we calm down the human?
it's the same kind of thing as just trying, if your dog is friendly. So I had a situation where a dog ran up to my dog and I could tell the dog coming was friendly. He was very exuberant, and I also knew at that point my dog was friendly too. The owner was completely flipping out, but I did just tell her it's fine. Like, I don't think anything's going to happen. But if a fight breaks out, it's very hard for you to watch your dog in that situation and also try to be kind or polite in that moment to the other person. So sometimes it's just a matter of saying, let's just deal with this later. Like, make sure your dog is safe. Do whatever, first aid you might need to do on your dog, and then figure out who that owner is and go back and talk to them later. Because I do think sometimes in the heat of the moment, if something bad happens, you just aren't going to have the presence of mind yourself to stop.
What about, they are in a rumble and we know not to grab the collar because we want to keep our hands.
Right.
What can we do? Throw a jacket over? And what would you recommend? Because there is that proverbial garden hose again is not available.
Exactly. There's two things. One is if you have something to throw over the dog's head, that is probably one of the safer options. It's just if it's the middle of summer and it's, California, you might
don't
not
get naked.
Exactly. I'm not necessarily saying take all your clothes off, but if you have a coat on, taking that off and throwing it over the head, a lot of times will startle the dogs enough that they'll separate because they're suddenly in the dark. The other tool that, again, you're going to look a little bit like the sling, you're carrying all this stuff on your belt, but another tool, they do sell a citronella based spray that, again, if you're in an environment where this happens a lot, it might be a tool that you could use. And it's similar. It's kind of like mace or a bear spray where, it's an unpleasant scent and an unpleasant feeling for the dogs. Again, it's not going to kill them, but they're not going to like it. But you can spray that type of a spray as a deterrent, either as dogs on coming up to you, or if your dog does get into a tussle with another dog. If you have to separate them, I don't recommend, like you said, grabbing their collar. The last resort for me is kind of to grab their hind legs, but knowing that as soon as you do that, the animal is most likely going to come back at you because you've now picked up their back legs. So that's always a last resort in my mind.
We want people to learn more about this new parent component you've added. So tell us that. We just have a few seconds left. I can't believe it. We got to have you back, Robin.
Sure.
Please say yes. Get you
Absolutely.
on the record. Yes.
Absolutely.
So how do people find out more about the Roughly Speaking Dog and the Dog Guru?
Yeah, so if you're a pet care business, definitely check us out at thedoggurus.com. And for pet parents who want to build a stronger bond with your dog, you can go to roughly-speaking-dog.com.
And what's one thing, you've had many dogs in your life, you got a new one, Ranger, who's a barn hunter. What's something Ranger has taught you to make you a better human?
You know, he has taught me that I do not always know the things he's going to love. And I've just tried things, and I've been surprised sometimes that he loves certain things that I thought, wow, I never thought he would like that. So it's worth experimenting with stuff that your dog might want to do.